Hi guys, today let's talk about starting a piece over. How to do it, what to do, when to do it. I have done this many times in the past and I like to make sure that if I'm starting something over, that not only do I fix the problem that caused me to need to start over, that I'm also making things better so that overall there is so much more positive that happened because I started over. So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's break this down. Talk about some of the things that I do when I'm approaching this kind of problem that I oftentimes have. So the piece that I am working on today is a prime example of this topic. This is a restart on a piece that maybe you guys recognize. I was working on a mermaid oil painting. Now she is not a mermaid. I can talk specifics about this piece later, but yeah, today we're just working on the first layer of this oil painting while I talk about starting pieces over. So probably most of us understand that sickening feeling when you realize that there is just something terribly wrong with your piece, that you've made some horrible mistake, or that there was something wrong from the very beginning and you just hoped that it would resolve itself and it never really did, and then you just realize that it's just too far gone. That's where starting a piece over comes in. The first step though that I always take is, can I fix it? I want to make sure that I'm not throwing away an opportunity to try something new or to change my plans and then make something really great out of what's in front of me. That has happened plenty of times where I thought it wouldn't work. I tried a few things and I was actually much happier with it than what I had even initially planned for that piece. So it is always really good to think through what are your options. A big part of this can be the limits of the medium that you're using itself. So with watercolors, there's only so many layers that you can put on a paper. So if you've already really saturated the paper with your washes, then it may not take more washes. If you've already gone dark with watercolors, it's probably not going to lift to a look that you're going to be happy with. So there are certain things that you're just not going to be able to step back from. But there are also lots of things that you can move forward with certain mediums. With oils, there's a lot more leniency as far as putting the layers down and working with opaque layers so you can cover things up. So it's just helpful to understand your medium and know what the limits are, where you can fix things, where you can not fix things. Also, mixed media is an option in a lot of cases. Being able to introduce gouache within your watercolor paintings can help. This is not always the perfect solution. Oftentimes you might just want to start over so that it does have that purely watercolored approach, or it's correct the first time and it doesn't have any of those like artifacts that can happen when something's not quite right and then you course correct. But it is helpful to be able to take some time and think through all of your options and then specifically decide which one is the best choice. But I do have an exciting announcement. The pins from my Kickstarter from last year, the Lost and Taken Woods pin collection, is actually available at my shop. So if you missed out on that, I have all of those pins available either as a set or individually. I love how they turned out. I'm really excited to finally be able to offer it freely on my shop. And of course, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who kickstarted it. You helped me to make this whole set of pins. But anyways, those are available. There's a link down in the description. It'll take you to my shop and I'll have all of those pins listed over there. After I've gone through that step and decided that the best course of action is to start over, that's when I need to very specifically pinpoint, why did it go wrong? What was the reason that this piece is not the best that it could have been, that can be salvaged? And that reason can vary, obviously, a lot with every way that you can mess up a piece. But I find that a lot of times it is bigger than what it seems like at first. So say the problem was that I made an area too dark and then it groups with another section that was intended to be dark. That could be that I simply mixed the paint wrong, but it also could have been that I didn't plan as well at the beginning. I didn't make as clear of a value study for this piece as I should have, so I was playing it more by ear as I was working on it. In that case, that means that I need to go way back to the beginning. When I start over, I also need to make sure that I do a much more refined value study and potentially color comp. And I need to make sure that I know exactly what's going on so that when I paint it again, I'm not going to make the mistake of not understanding where things need to go, what values things need to be to make sure that everything reads correctly. I find that a lot of my mistakes happen in the composition or the sketch. There's something that didn't feel quite right, but I breezed past it because I was just anxious to start working on the actual piece, and then it ends up not really working out, and I'm not happy with it. And then that means that I have to go back to the sketch and make sure that the sketch is correct, and I rework the composition. And this is where I like to try to shift my mindset. It can be extremely frustrating to work on a piece, put hours into it, and then realize that you need to scrap it and start over. I find that for me, the only way that I can enjoy that second piece and usually have it be more successful is if I take some time to put a positive spin on it. If I just roll right back into just fixing that single mistake and I start over and it feels like I'm just repeating all these things over again, I'm just wasting more and more of those hours that I had already spent on it. I just get more frustrated and irritated with the piece, and then it doesn't turn out as good. So I like to take a step where I can really just plan out what can make it so much better. What are things that I thought about while I was working on the piece after I had finished the sketch, and I couldn't have included it, but thought about, wow, that could have been really cool had I done that. Or what are new color effects that I could include, like having a gradient in areas that I had actually originally planned on having just a single color. And I like to get a list of those things. What are new details that I can include that would be just so much fun to draw and to paint? What are areas that I can just get in there and really refine it more than maybe I did in that first pass? And finding a list of those things that I can do that sound really exciting, sound really fun, I know will make the piece more of what I'd hoped it would be. Getting a lot of those things, or at least a couple of those things, makes it feel worthwhile to start over. And I think that's really the key for me. I need to feel like it's worthwhile to start over. Like I'm not just fixing a mistake, but I'm really enhancing a piece. I'm making it better than it was going to be. And I like to remember that I had to go through that first step of doing that first piece and making those mistakes and trying those things out and seeing that it didn't work or that it wasn't quite enough. I had to do that before I could do the second piece that did work, before I could figure those things out that would make an exciting piece. So when it's time for me to restart a piece, I like to go through each step that I do preliminarily before I start a piece to make sure that there are things that I'm looking at that I can do better. Not all those steps necessarily need to be enhanced, but since I'm going to do all that work over again, I'm going to transfer it again, I might as well look for any opportunity to make it better. That's really where the more positive approach comes from, is I like to look at each step and see, how can I make this better? How can I make this more exciting? So I'll go back to the value study and the color comp. Sometimes I didn't do them, and that's the reason why I had those problems later on. So I might do those, or I might look at them and say, okay, well, while I was painting it, I ran into, say, this issue. These two colors were too similar and right next to each other, or whatever the case is that I may not have realized until I was actually working on the piece. So I can take some of that experience that I got from working on it and then fix up the color comp, fix up the values. Then I'll move on to looking at the sketch, and I'll look for any compositional issues, anything that maybe in that first pass I didn't really notice, or maybe I can entirely change the composition to make it more dynamic or interesting. In the sketch, I like to look for details that will make it more interesting or will tell the story better. Sometimes I'll change details that maybe as I was working on the piece, I realized, oh, well, that detail could be slightly changed so that it actually fits the story better or matches a different detail a little bit better. So I'll just pick through that and look for anything like that. I'll look for areas that could have been more refined, like eyes or hands, anything like that might have been not quite as tightly rendered in the sketch phase. And if I render them a little bit better in that step, then the painting process always goes better. So yeah, I like to comb through that and just look for any spots like that. Hopefully this video gave you some good ideas on how to positively approach restarting a painting. I feel completely differently about doing that the last couple of years since I've tried to change my mindset about it and have this kind of approach to it. And like I mentioned, the pin collection is available at my shop now. That link is down in the description. It'll take you over to my shop where you can get to the set or the individuals, or you can mix and match. I love how they turned out. I love the quality of these pins, and I'm really happy to be able to offer them on my shop now. And that is it for today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.